Hey, Scott, how you doing this week?
Hey, Hal, good to see you once again. I tell you, these Tuesdays, they come around every 7 days, whether we like it or not.
You know what? But I'm liking it more and more because we get to talk to so many like fascinating people. We are learning so much from just doing the podcast. I mean, it's amazing.
No,
So
and I hope we're adding the value that we want to add. And I would just ask, those of you who are listening, please take the time to shoot us some comments, shoot us some emails, let us know how we're doing. Even if it's just a thumbs up on LinkedIn or something on the post, it'll just help us know that we're getting the right direction. And that's what we want to do.
yeah, and also if you have a topic in mind that you would like for us to kind of delve into, maybe a particular guest, if you yourself might be a guest that you think you have something to add to the conversation, we are more than open to new ideas. We are just really putting together what we super find interesting and what we think will add to your everyday knowledge and just overall well-being. So yeah, this is 100% communicative. So thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much for being a part of Tuesday Townhall every single week.
Yeah. Well, today we have Josh Liebman. Last week we listened to and spoke with Matt Heller twice.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah. No, it never gets old. Yeah. No.
Gotta keep the fun.
You gotta have a sense of humor.
That's right. And Matt spoke a lot on the leadership, employee engagement side. And today with Josh, we're going to talk more about the customer experience side, some feedback, and a new project he has that he's working on. So I'm excited to introduce to you guys Josh Liebman.
Yeah, and be sure to stay tuned in for the whole time because he's going to talk about an event he has to where you guys can learn even more information than we have on this podcast. So without further ado, let's bring on Josh.
Yep.
Hey, Josh.
How you doing, Al? Scott, I'm really great to be here. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Super.
Thanks for being here.
You guys, or you being with us today. We had your Attraction Pros partner, Matt, really pinch hit for us last week. So appreciate that. And we already had you scheduled. So excited to kind of get from you some of the customer side of the family entertainment business as we talk. But thought we'd just give you a minute just to tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing. I know you've got a new venture going with Backlooper that we'll hear a little bit about also coming up. And then just wanted to really have some conversations around, we're into September now, kind of what do you feel, State of the Union? You have a lot of feelers out and connections in the industry. So hear from you kind of what you're feeling and sensing, and then just talk a little bit, add some value to our listeners around customer expectations. I know you've done some webinars recently on how to deal with de-escalation and things like that. So again, welcome to Tuesday Townhall.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Give us a little bit about your background, kind of your time in the industry, and what you've been doing, what you've been up to.
Sure. Sounds good. So I've been in the theme parks, attractions, hospitality, tourism, business industries for a little over 15 years now. Started as a ride operator at Cedar Point between high school and college, and just kind of really fell in love with the business side of things. So ended up pursuing a degree in theme park management from the University of Central Florida in Orlando. Go Knights. Went back, got my master's in hospitality and tourism. While I was in Orlando, I worked for Disney for a while. I worked for Universal for a while. I left Orlando for a summer, opened Hard Rock Park in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Okay. Sadly, that park did not make it, but it's always a fun story to talk about it. And people who had visited the park or people who had heard of the park always love to hear my stories about it because it's like something that was so short-lived. Came back to Orlando, worked at Universal for a couple of years in attractions, moved into guest services and guest communications, where really fell in love with the entire, I would say, guest feedback, contributing to the overall success of the business component of what we were doing. And that very much kind of spurred my passion for even really what I'm doing today and kind of what I've taken with me from there. I left Universal to go open Legoland, and I was that was my first time in retail. So I was actually the souvenir photo retail manager for Pixolve, which was Legoland Photo's souvenir photo partner. Opened the park. It's an awesome experience. Left Legoland to go open Zoomer's amusement park down in Fort Myers, Florida. I was the assistant GM there for a little bit. And then I left that really to finish my master's degree, just to kind of finish up grad school, and then went into consulting after that. So I took a little bit of a detour out of attractions, but still in hospitality. I was consulting for luxury hotels and resorts for a little bit. So literally, like right after I got my master's degree, I didn't even pay rent for close to 2 years because I was living out of Ritz-Carltons and Four Seasons and Waldorf Astorias.
There's worse places to.
I was going to say it was miserable.
Yeah,
it was
poor you.
absolutely horrible. Yeah. That's a fun job to talk about because it definitely had every single benefit you could imagine coming from it, but it was also incredibly taxing as well.
Yeah,
It was some of the most intense work that I've done, doing these quality assurance evaluations, very much undercover. It was like a high level mystery shopper essentially, but yes, I would play a round of golf and then go get a massage and then eat a steak dinner, all in the same day, and then like wake up and have the breakfast buffet. Like, anything you can imagine. Great.
Yeah.
Coming out of that job, I had it, but it was also, there were some very, very stressful moments of it as well.
Yeah, there's something interesting between, both yours and even Matt's backgrounds. And as I've spent about the last 8 years in family entertainment, I find this to be true. And that is, people who get in early and young seem to stay in.
Yeah.
And, hospitality is something that is a true career track. And, for those listening, GMs, owner operators, the people you're hiring today, some of them may, run that gamut all the way up to, upper management, executive level type stuff. And I've seen that. And it's, very, very neat to see and encouraging that there is a career track and path all the way through education, but then in operations and management and executive level.
No, absolutely. And it's also counterintuitive to what a lot of people say, that hospitality and, attractions is a very transient business, which it really is. A lot of people might just be looking for a summer job or, something part-time while they're in high school or college or beyond. But then, there is that I wouldn't even say a small subset, a pretty large subset of those people who get in as a line level employee and just end up being very driven by it and want to keep growing and learning within the business.
I find these upper management, the people I run into in upper management have been in it a long time. It's, I made a transition, kind of after 25 years of a career into family entertainment, and have stayed in it now for 8 years on the manufacturing side. But my point there was really to encourage listeners, owners, operators, GMs to take the time. We talked about this with Matt, investing in your staff, because you never know where it'll be.
There's a meme that I saw several years ago, and I think I saw it and immediately sent it to Matt because I was like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And it's like the CFO asks the CEO, "What if we invest in our employees and they leave?" And the CEO responds, "Well, what if we don't and they stay?" And Matt's like, "Oh, that's brilliant." I was like, "This is up Matt's alley," and I knew he'd like that. So. And I've always found that to be, a really interesting and kind of a driver, from that standpoint of like, invest in your employees because, hey, they might actually stay. They might not just be that transient summer job or that, that part-time employee.
Exactly.
So after I left the I left the hotel consulting firm to focus on my own consulting firm, specifically for the theme parks and attractions industry. And that was focused on driving sales and revenue through a lot of, admissions products and guest experience, and ended up parting ways with my business partner. And I'd always been close with Scott Carson. He's the founder, CEO of Amusement Advantage. I'd known him for several years, and he gave me the opportunity to basically start Amusement Advantage's consulting division, while at the same time helping to grow the existing mystery shop side of the business. So Amusement Advantage has been around since 1996, about to celebrate 25 years, and it was a huge a huge growth opportunity for me personally, and also for the company as well. So it aligned very well, and it was an awesome partnership. Lasted 5 years. And it grew, it evolved, and he's been supportive of me during this time with this transition. With at the time that this airs, it'll be just a week since I announced Backlooper as its standalone product. As kind of or I've been telling this is now my full-time focus of helping attractions and operators collect more guest feedback than those who would otherwise perhaps just remain silent, or those who would just post online reviews, help them engage with their guests, strengthen their reputation, and foster guest engagement and loyalty. So I like to say everything I've been consulting on, everything I've been passionate on for the last several years, going back, over a decade, is just funneled into now what is what can kind of have something to put in a box, basically, and say, like, this is the product from that. So that in a nutshell is my kind of background in the industry.
Not a lengthy background or warranted background at all. You've got quite the pedigree now. So going back to being a younger person starting out as just an operator, now Matt has the similar background like Scott was saying. So do you think that helps you in your consultancy and things of that nature, because you can see it from that aspect instead of just like, you see it from all aspects? You see it from a customer standpoint, you see it from an operator standpoint, so you can understand their plight if they're upset or disgruntled or whatever, and then also you can see it as a leader from that perspective. So does that play into that? Because you and Matt have that in common, and it seems like you guys have a pretty good understanding of the entire industry from just that experience alone.
I think it's crucial to have that type of experience. And I think that if I were to be doing what I'm doing today without having that background, it would really be like putting a square peg in a round hole. And so I even like to say that, or I like to think that I have a competitive advantage by being very focused in the industry and having the background into it, because I see other companies coming in and trying to, whether it's, sell a similar product or service, or try to kind of like operate in the same space, but they, come from, something that is a completely separate industry, nothing, hospitality or services, or the service industry in general, that it's almost like speaking two very different languages, even if the functionality might be specifically the same.
Sure.
For instance, just one small example is, I barely even use the word customer at all.
Okay.
Because to me, that was, that was beaten into me on day one, even prior to studying hospitality or working for Disney. I remember my first day at Cedar Point talking to, one of my coworkers and saying, oh, well, what if a customer does blah, 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 blah. And my coworker, who was also just another frontline employee, ride operator, we're making like $6 an hour, like $6.25. She was like, okay, one quick thing, they're not customers. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, they're guests. It's like we've invited them in. And I was like, okay, there's something there. And then now it's almost like a trigger for me. If I hear the word customer, I think, okay, this is not with this like hospitality mindset of,
right,
what we are doing from a service and experience standpoint. So that's one of the things, like, I've implemented that into my training. But it goes back to having that operational background. And obviously that's just one small example of kind of the mindset that is formulated from years of not only observing kind of, from a consultant or from a practitioner standpoint, but I need to pull back from those operational days as well.
That's fantastic. So having done, I'm going to guess hundreds, if not more than hundreds of mystery shops, what are some of the things that you pull into this new feedback business that you are launching with Backlooper that kind of help drive some of the things that you want to get across to owners and operators?
Sure, absolutely. So I think that's a good time to actually point out how what Backlooper does very much complements other feedback collection or other types of survey tools. So we'll use mystery shops for example, that one of the things that mystery shops can do that really no other collection method is able to do is really like drill down into the specific granular data points of the guest experience. So if you want to know like what percentage of the time are our team members upselling memberships, I mean, that was one actually I observed like with some trampoline parks that we were working with who implemented a membership program. And I'm like, okay, it's 8% of the time based off of mystery shops.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably not going to see that if you're looking through online reviews, or if you're looking at, any other type of kind of survey mechanism, or, what percentage of the time are staff members wearing name tags. So you can get down to very specific levels and have a lot of detailed narratives surrounding that, that supports that. Then you flip that over to say, so let's take mystery shops, and we'll call that like an inch wide and a mile deep, right? You might do anywhere from like 1 to 4 a month or so, and you get a ton of information from that. Flip over to Backlooper, maybe it's like a mile wide and an inch deep. So you're still able to get a lot of valuable data from it. Now we're looking at a wider pool of guests. So now I want to talk to your paying guests, rather than the ones that are sent in specifically with this very long detailed form. And let's keep this very open-ended. So it's almost like it's the opposite of a survey, where we prompt the guest to basically leave what would be similar, a little bit different, but similar to if they were to post an online review. But the operator is going to get that. They're going to learn about it because it comes through Backlooper as the channel and mechanism for delivery. So if there are concerns, if there are flaws, if there are areas of friction point within the operation that they need to know about, it's all great, valuable data. They're not learning about it from Google reviews or from TripAdvisor or from Yelp or from a public arena, I like to say, because that is where the data can be very valuable, the information can be very valuable, but the damage is already done, and the likelihood of not only winning that guest back, but really winning back all other guests or all other potential guests who might be reading that. Now there's a much larger uphill battle. I've seen studies that said one negative review can turn away up to 30 prospective guests or customers within, it's not, industry specific.
Absolutely.
So that if you get that feedback, it might be the exact same text, whatever it is, but you're getting that internally, it's so much more valuable, because now, and especially if you got that guest contact info, especially if you're getting a notification going up, whether it's in your email or, a pop-up on your phone, which is what, all of this is channeling into what Backlooper does. Now you can say, all right, with the click of a button, or with, just a quick phone call, I can get a hold of that guest right away and say, hey, thanks so much for sending this in. Do you have a couple of minutes? I want to talk to you about it. So what it does is it enables those operators to be able to strengthen that engagement with the guest after their visit, to help foster guest loyalty and be able to put systems in place if there was a negative experience, of being able to implement that service recovery in an effective and very efficient way.
That's awesome, because to your point, I'll say this, being a marketing person myself, is that one bad review can not be covered up by 100 good reviews. Sometimes really depends on how granular that bad review is. And also, it is very hard to get someone to take down or to kind of amend the bad review. So being able to contact them directly and have that conversation and let them be heard, and that's mostly what people want anyway, is to be heard. And so I think that's great, because that is one of the hardest, especially this day and age. That's one of the hardest things to do, is to overcome one bad review. And much less, I mean, if you have a couple on there, that's really tough. So yeah, that's awesome.
And the frustrating thing too about it is, you're working so hard. The operators are working so hard to, and this is irrelevant to COVID, working so hard to provide a great experience so that they can continue running their business and see satisfaction. You bring COVID into this, now they are working. I mean, we've seen what the industry has been doing over the last 6 months, right? Our guests might not be able to see specifically what's been going on the back end. They only see what they see when they walk into the building. But oh man, you're working so hard just to bring back that consumer confidence that was lost because of the shutdown, and to prove to your guests, to your audience, to your prospective guests, that you have a clean and safe facility that you are able to operate, that you're able to still deliver that fun, memorable, family friendly experience that you've always done while operating within these new parameters. And then you see a review on Google that's like, this place was filthy. I can't believe that, they've opened, there was no hand sanitizer anywhere. The employees weren't wearing masks. The operator needs to know that, because they need to fix that. But you see that online, and it's just so defeating. Right.
Yeah.
It's just really saying, so it's so counter to what they want to do, what the service and the experience.
Are you finding that, or seeing that negative feedback, that low star review is pretty prevalent around parks that are able to open and attractions that are able to reopen? So that's part one of the question. Then part two is, what are the things, that, you just mentioned a number of things around cleaning, but are there some other things that you would say, hey, as a park operator, these are things that I would really recommend you do proactively to prevent, that negative view?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So to answer the first part of the question, it's really all over the map. But I will say this too, from the history of looking at and studying online reviews and guest feedback, that and I was talking about this kind of towards the beginning of COVID, or the beginning of the shutdown, is that things like cleanliness and sanitation have always been on the guest's mind, because they have always shown up in online reviews and feedback. But I've always said it's kind of like, it's almost like an afterthought for the guest, that, you were innocent until proven guilty. You wouldn't necessarily make the decision to go visit a place because it's clean. Why are you going to this trampoline park? Oh, it's clean. You wouldn't necessarily hear that 6-7 months ago. Now it's completely the other way around. So now you are unclean until you prove that you are, right? Or you are not fit for the public unless, until you prove that you are. So now it is completely front and center. You're no longer innocent till proven guilty. So now that cleanliness type of feedback is even so much more meaningful, because it very much is top of mind, and people are commenting on it. People have always commented on it, whether it's positive or negative. And cleanliness scores generally, what I would see, were very high. So you wouldn't say, why are you going to this place? Oh, because it's clean. But you might say, why did you enjoy that experience? Oh, because it was clean. And that's all, that's all pre-COVID. Right. And then now it's, why are you going there? Well, we're going there because they've proven to us through their social media, through their marketing, through their messaging, from other people that we've talked to, from other reviews that we've seen, that they are absolutely taking this seriously. And, not only cleanliness, but also physical distancing, trying to avoid saying social distancing.
Right.
We still want to be social, right? Kind of the same thing with that guest customer mindset, right? It's not social distancing, it's physical distancing. And then after the visit, of saying, okay, well, what did you enjoy about your visit, or what could have made it better? Well, we enjoyed that they were taking the sanitation practices seriously, or saying, what could have made it better? You know what? They could have really enforced physical distancing. They could have had more markings on the floor. So all those types of things, it's not a new concept for them to show up in reviews. It's always shown up as a retrospective view of the experience, but now it's very much brought into the forefront as well. So the second part of the question of what can operators do to best, mitigate that challenge, and I would say look at the complete A to Z journey that your guest takes. So I don't consider myself to be a social media expert, but during the shutdown, I remember thinking, all right, social media and guest experience, they're the exact same thing right now. And for the locations that are still closed, they are identical, because that is your guest experience. That is all that you can provide. And even with, much, or, at least some of the industry now having reopened and now trying to balance that, of really leveraging the guest experience through social media and using that same upbeat, energetic, fun vibe that we have we are not a stale, dry, bland industry. I don't need to convince anybody of that. But we have a lot more, I would say stale, bland, kind of messages to communicate, but doing that in a fun, exciting way. So I'll kind of refer back to your interview with Matt with the skunk ape. So like, that's a perfect example of what I've said. Hey, here's what you should be doing, with social media. There's an FEC out in California, Fiesta Village Family Fun Park in Colton, just east of LA. And they just posted, this was like right around when they opened, it was a 30-second video of one of their team members like power washing a go-kart, and it was like, there was like rock music to it, and like they like sped it up. So it was like fun to watch.
Right.
And then in that Facebook post, they were like, come on down to Fiesta Village. We've got hand sanitizer. We're doing this. We're, physical distancing, we're blah, blah, blah. We're doing all of this. And then linking to where, you want to put the highlights in your social media. Don't put a Facebook post that says like, here is literally every single thing that we are doing.
Right.
Yeah.
You've got the subset of your audience that wants to know that and wants to learn that needs to be immediately available. Put that on your website, and then put the quick key highlights into those social media posts.
Right.
So that's where really, social media and guest experience are, there's a very blurred line there, to the point where the line might not even exist anymore. Once they're on property, then that's where obviously you need to keep those promises. So first and foremost, before trying to exceed your guests' expectations, you need to meet your expectations. You need to say everything that you promised in your posts and everything that you have agreed to do. They better be able to see that front and center. So going back to cleanliness being an afterthought prior to COVID, now I'm walking in the door, I'm walking in the building. What do I want to see immediately up front? And I'll give you an example of something that, so I'm in Chicago on the north side of the city. There's 2 Whole Foods that are like within a mile from me. There's one of them you go into right when you walk in the door. Well, first of all, they're managing the capacity of the building. You might have to wait outside. Right when you get in the door, there's an employee wearing a mask and gloves, and they are wiping down every single cart and basket, and they are giving you a freshly sanitized, cart or basket, for your shopping. That makes me feel really comfortable, right? I go into the other one, and they're doing a good job too, as far as, managing the queue and the entrance into the building. And they still have that same person doing that, but it's when you return your cart, and then there's a sign at the front, or a sign, as you walk in, saying all carts have been sanitized. And it's like, okay, I don't feel uncomfortable, but I feel more comfortable having seen the process.
Absolutely.
Right. So all those things that would normally be, part of back of house, or part of the back end of kind of what we want to do, so the guest senses it and feels it, but they don't, we don't want them to see it. Now we want them to see that. We want them to be, front and center with that. And then once all those bases are covered, then now exceed your guests' expectations. Now go above and beyond. Don't forget to provide that amazing experience that you've always provided and what you're known for. Otherwise, what's the point in visiting your park if you're there just to just to stay 6 feet apart from each other, and just to abide by policies? So all of that has to be in place. But then making sure you can weave that into you're now, I hate using the phrase, but the new normal, right? The new experience
the experience that people are having.
We've had some park owners, Scott illustrated this on our last episode, but that have gone to the extreme to show, hey, we're even willing to shut down attractions, even if they're our most popular or whatever, if it puts peace of mind into the guest. We'll say that now instead of customer, into the guest mind, because thank you. So, but we want to make sure that we let you know that we're doing everything we can. They're going above and beyond. And I think for some people that means the world. For some people, they don't mind, whatever. They're like, some people are like, well, I'm not going to lick my hands or whatever, they don't really care, they're just whatever. But some people so you have to speak to everybody and on both ends of the spectrum and everybody in between. So I do want to say one more thing about the reviews and things like that. Saying some place is dirty or unclean or whatever, yeah, it can be full hyperbole, especially in this day and age, but you still have to be able to offset that hyperbolic remark. So, just I would say not only learn how to communicate with people, but also learn how to do your just how to offset that in your comments as well. Don't get angry at the person via comments, because that will turn more people off. So I've seen some, not our parks, but I've seen in the past, I've seen some people go that route. So that can get a little bit tricky.
And on the marketing side, on the marketing side, we've talked about the use of social media. I mean, going back to when we started, I mean, there's some of our early talks with Cheryl Bendeglass and some others around that. And I want to say to those listening, I mean, if you haven't started, it's not too late to start.
Right.
Use your phone, shoot some videos. It doesn't have to be high production value necessarily. It just has to be, and begin posting some of those things. There's just great tools that are easy to use even on your iPhone to get a video up of people cleaning and shooting some videos, and get your staff to post some stuff. So if you haven't started, it's not too late to start, and those are important pieces of the puzzle that you need to put together as guests start coming back into your park.
That's why I love Skunk Ape. That's why I love Skunk Ape. That's the greatest. That's the greatest thing I've seen.
And stay up to date with whatever the current kind of message or like flavor of the week, month in this very continually evolving situation. And just sitting at home and watching TV and seeing commercials, I'm thinking, like, I cannot imagine how marketers and just advertisers must be scrambling to produce content that is relevant, that needs to be released in a very specific, timely manner, and might be obsolete in a week.
No, I saw an alarm commercial last night watching Jeopardy. Yeah, I watch Jeopardy. I'm old.
Wheel of Fortune's next.
And you can tell it obviously was produced in the last probably 4 to 6 weeks, because everybody was wearing a mask as they were leaving the door and setting their alarm.
Right.
And like, okay. But it's very, but then you also see ads that were produced early on in the pandemic that should have been taken down because they're just not relevant anymore.
Yeah.
The messaging is off. And so, I agree. Really staying up on what your local and state communication is important.
And then tying it into, I mean, specifically actually the local and state part of it. And maybe this is just like a quick little tangent, but like some national commercials that I'm seeing from, like, whether it's like rental cars or like car commercials or something like that, might have a message that is geographically segmented and applicable to some places. And there's one commercial, I don't even know what it is, but it starts with, "It's time for us to get out and go again." And I'm like sitting at home, like very much in lockdown. And I'm like come on.
Like, maybe if you're in, state or county, but no, it's not.
Every segment of the population, depending on your city, your state, the messaging's different. So you have to learn, as a marketer, you have to learn how to speak. So luckily, our particular parks are, centralized in that one area. So we do have parks that are franchised out across, but they can, kind of hone in on that messaging per park. But you can't speak to people in Cheyenne the same you can speak to people in Atlanta. It just depends. So, well, I do want to say that this information is fantastic, but you were telling us that you're having an event next week. So do you want to kind of clue people in on your event so that they can attend and possibly even get more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm hosting a free webinar specifically on guest feedback strategies to help strengthen your operations, your guest engagement, and your reputation. So some of the things that we talked about in this webinar, as far as, making sure that guests are providing feedback internally rather than posting negative reviews. You definitely want to strengthen the value of reviews. Obviously, it's a huge marketing driver. when they're positive. So as far as, what to do with certain types of feedback through certain types of channels. And this is, you can register for it at backlooper.com/guest-feedback-strategies. And I'm sure
I'll put that down in the, I'll put that link down so everybody can have that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, just webinar, but that's not not as specific to,
Let's make them
what
work
we're doing
for it.
here.
Yeah.
And it's on Thursday, September 10th. And depending on your local time zone, I think it's at noon Eastern time, I believe. And it's, it'll be about an hour long or so. And, it's just going to be looking at a number of different ways to maximize the effect of your guest feedback to, like I said, help improve your operations. Cause that's another one of the things, kind of one of the tenets of Backlooper, one of the philosophies that really go into it is it's not just about getting the feedback, but it is about specifically what you're doing with it. So there is the guest engagement component of it. So being able to respond quickly to a guest and do so in a very effective manner, but then also where does this feedback now get organized within your system? So as far as being able to aggregate the feedback, and at the end of the month, now you have all this feedback, well, maybe you are kind of going off the cuff and just trying to make improvements based off of every single email or comment or review that comes in. And while that can be beneficial, it needs to be organized in a way that aggregates and identifies what is the top priority that guests are talking about, or what are the top 3 priorities that we need to focus on addressing this month. And, sometimes the solution isn't always the opposite of the problem. So I'll give you a little tidbit of what you might hear on the webinar. Right. Is that if you look at, let's say we have all this aggregated data and we say that, the largest complaints guests have are about, a certain KPI that we're measuring, a certain factor that, that is important. Doing the opposite doesn't necessarily solve the problem. So like price, everyone is always going to complain that your park is too expensive or that, it's overpriced or whatever it is. Well, the opposite of that is just lowering your prices. And, that's an easy example of, something that isn't necessarily going to be the solution, but instead of, looking at price as, okay, well, what do we need to do to make the price lower? It's what do we need to do to reduce the perception of an overpriced or a mispriced facility. So about adding value, about communicating what all is included with it, things like that. Or I'll give you another example here. There's an aquarium I've been working with for several years, and we've been looking at their TripAdvisor reviews. We've been looking at guest feedback and aggregating all their data. And one of the biggest complaints that they would get, particularly on TripAdvisor, and we would aggregate this and track this over time, is size. The aquarium is too small. Okay, so the opposite of the problem is make the aquarium bigger, right? Well,
right.
That's not necessarily the easiest or the most timely solution
right.
you can do.
Right.
So let's pull back and let's look at kind of the operational and the guest experience component of why people are complaining that the aquarium is too small. So really pulling back and saying, okay, well, what else is included in this feedback? We were in and out in 45 minutes. It was overpriced. It was too expensive. We didn't get the value. We didn't see enough animals, whatever it is. So what they did to be able to address this was they reorganized their existing animal exhibit staff members and now position them in more ways that they were actually blocking the pathways as people were getting through. Okay. And they would stop people and they would talk to people. They might have an animal with them that they're able to basically be a conversation starter. And so the goal was, let's get guests to stay in the building longer, interact with not only more animals, but also more people as well. There's the human element of the guest experience. And we started looking at the data there, and they got a review on TripAdvisor that said, I think this is the largest aquarium in North America. It wasn't. And they did not add a single square foot to the building. So if guests are complaining about the size of the building, no one was referencing actually how big the building was. It was why they felt that it wasn't big enough, or why they didn't have
a great example of using data to make some changes in your operations that legitimately make a difference.
Right.
It wasn't the size of the building; it was the length of stay, and with some creative thinking, they were able to make that change. And I think we have that same opportunity, in the family entertainment business to really think through the data, collect the data, think through it, and make some operational changes that can significantly improve. And length of stay, I know, is very important, especially in trampoline and adventure parks, because that means increased food and beverage, additional time, all those kinds of things that are super important. So I appreciate that. I know people will gain a lot of insight from attending.
Yeah, and as you're measuring that data, or as you're making those changes, that data should still be coming in to either validate the improvements that you're making or necessitate further adjustments or tweaks. So you have this ongoing, continually flowing feedback loop, back looper. See where I got the name there? That allows you to continually enhance the operations, the guest experience, and an overall business.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, listen, I know you've got a hard stop coming up here, so I want to make sure you got time for a little bit of break before you hit your next one. But really appreciate you taking the time to be with us on our Tuesday Town Hall. Al will talk a little bit about how people subscribe here in just a second. But really great getting to know you. Look forward to continuing seeing you out on LinkedIn and around virtually until we can kind of connect up physically.
Cannot wait until we can all be together in person again. I was even thinking yesterday, I was like, throughout COVID, I feel like I've talked to so many people and met so many new people that by the time I get to the next conference, I will not have remembered that I might be actually meeting a person for the first time, because I feel like I know so many people so well.
Very fascinating. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that all comes together. So thanks again, Josh. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So everybody, please go out and subscribe Josh's podcast, Attraction Pros. We want to make sure that everybody gets as much information as possible. Like and subscribe our podcast, Tuesday Town Hall. And if you want to see kind of inside baseball a little bit with some of the operators and industry folks from our industry, go back and listen to some of our earlier episodes 1 through say 14. You really get to see them because we had it as a town hall. That's why this is called Tuesday Town Hall. We had actual couple hundred people at one point, like 100 people here and there. So it was really interesting. So you can actually see how they thought outside the box, how they troubleshot certain situations, how they handled, guest questions. And
you're never going to say customer again, are you?
Well, I mean, yeah, no,
you'll get that a little electric shock there.
Right. I feel like a Disney person now, like no bubble gum. So, but thank you all for stopping by, and we will see you all on the next Tuesday Town Hall.
All right. Thanks.